Welcome, everyone. So as people are joining, we are going to have interpretation for tonight. So I'm going to make a quick interpretation announcement. So if you are a monolingual English or Spanish speaker, please click the world icon on the bottom of your screen and select the language you prefer. Si usted habla inglés o español solamente, por favor mire en la parte de abajo de su computadora o teléfono y haga clic en la foto del mundo que le aparece en la lengua de su preferencia. Gracias. And now I would like to invite Viola.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate all of you joining us today. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters. My colleagues and I will lead this meeting, and I invite them to introduce themselves in the chat. Congratulations, Ms. Sanchez, on this historic making achievement. First woman, first Latina to be Sheriff of Alameda County. Maurice.
Good evening. My name is Maurice Harper. I am a Faith in Action East Bay leader and a member of St. Columba Church in Oakland. I want to welcome Ms. Sanchez. Thank you for meeting with us. Now, I invite Yuri to make another interpretation announcement.
You're muted, Yuri.
Gracias, Chris. If you are a monolingual English or Spanish speaker, please click the world icon on the bottom of your screen and select the language you prefer. Si usted habla inglés o español solamente, por favor, mira en la parte de abajo de su computadora o teléfono y haga clic en la foto del mundo que le aparece en la lengua de su preferencia. Gracias.
For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I'll go over how our meeting will be conducted. This town hall is being recorded. After initial 7 questions and answers, and we have the opportunity to hear Ms. Sanchez's responses, another 15 minutes will be available for Q&A from the chat. The initial questions will involve setting aside a couple of minutes for a question, 3 minutes for Ms. Sanchez to answer, and as there is time at the discretion of the person asking the question, a 3-minute follow-up for clarification. Now, my colleague Maurice will share the mission of Faith in Action, East Bay and ICJJ. Maurice?
Faith in Action reflects our growth into building power together with community leaders from across Alameda and Contra Costa counties. We are a multi-faith, multiracial, multilingual network made up of more than 23 congregations that include over 25,000 families. Faith in Action East Bay leaders organize around the issues that impact our communities, including access to affordable housing, excellent public schools, ending mass incarceration, civic engagement, just immigration policies to create family reunification. Faith in Action East Bay is a member of PICO, California, and Faith in Action National Network. We are a political, nonpartisan 501c3 nonprofit organization. Emerging from a project of Faith in Action East Bay is an Alameda County focus project of a dozen congregation and faith communities. ICJJ seeks to reduce incarceration as a response to social problems in Alameda County and to decrease harmful jail conditions. ICJJ advocates to decrease the number of those in prison and close the revolving door to jail, especially for those with mental health or housing needs. The jail must be safe, humane, and supportive of successful reentry into our community. As mentioned in our mission, we are a faith-based organization. So I invite Dr. Cummings to share with us an opening faith reflection.
Thank you, Maurice. I want to thank Ms. Sanchez for being with us and to acknowledge the work of ICJJ and our Faith in Action East Bay leaders. I am a Christian and will be leading this reflection out of my own tradition. And as an organization, we acknowledge and recognize that there are many faiths, traditions that are a part of our community. I'd like to share briefly a statement that was made by Pope Francis. As we are a faith community that is driven by our values, our faith values, and one of the central faith values that we affirm is the value of the dignity of human life, of all human life. So I love this quote that St. Francis stated, and it represents what I think and believe. Our rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you. Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you. Let us pray. O God, who is known by many names, we give thanks for this moment, and we ask your wisdom and your guidance as we discuss these important matters. In the many names by which we are known, we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Cummings. Now, at that reflection, let us also share the purpose of this meeting. Our purpose today is to support you, Ms. Sanchez, in your new position and to support your efforts to make substantive improvements to Santa Rita and other aspects of the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. As the administration under a new sheriff gets underway, we look forward to regular reports on the state of the jail. Faith in Action East Bay and ICJJ and community members look forward to building a positive, sustaining relationship with you. Maurice?
Viola, thank you. Now I would like to invite Ms. Sanchez to introduce herself and to share her priorities as the new elected sheriff.
Well, thank you, everyone. I am honored to be here with the group. And I mentioned it earlier when we were doing the practice session that there's no other group that I would want to get right back into the game with other than the Faith in Action group. We've enjoyed our discussions regarding jail advocacy calls, the ones that Supervisor Valle has helped facilitate so that we can provide some updates on our COVID protocols within the jail. And I look forward to having maybe it won't be in the form of phone calls, but a way that we can continue on with allowing for advocacy calls or meetings to continue to occur where we're sharing updates within the jail, whether they are focused on COVID, whether they're focused on other issues that are surfacing within the jail. I definitely believe that we've learned a great deal. I know that our agency members and some of the changes that we've made in the jail have come from those calls. So I thank you for taking the time out of your day to be able to participate in those, for those of you that are regular attendees, and it's good to see that you're all here tonight. With that, I'll go into my coming into office in January and what that's going to look like. I had a number of platform priorities related to my candidacy for sheriff. And my focus was for accountability for the sheriff's office and for us to be accountable to our community and that we answer to the community. And my role is as a public servant, and that is how I will fill this seat as sheriff. I am also focused on community engagement and community, allowing the community to have a voice in how we provide services. I am also going to be focused on racial justice and what racial justice in law enforcement looks like for our agency and out in the community. I've also, being the division commander of Santa Rita Jail, seen failures inside this facility and have already developed relationships with partners that include the DA's office, CBOs, to bring services into the jail and also to bring vocational and educational opportunities here in the jail. Those are reentry services that have a very small presence right now, but we are going to build out and have a very large presence here in the coming future. So those are my platform priorities. Those are priorities that we have developed a transition team and continue to add members of a transition team to develop a report on what the community can expect from the sheriff's office moving forward, and what my focus will be. And I'll also be leaning on you as community members to help build how we get there, what it will look like, what you are calling for, and how we can work together to achieve very common goals and provide a higher quality of life for everyone who lives in our communities. And again, thank you for having me tonight. I'm looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you. We sent Ms. Sanchez a summary of questions. We have some members of this panel that will ask specific questions. I did want to take note that we appreciate it as a community, 152 individuals participating this evening with us. Jean Moses, if you could please ask the first question.
Thank you, Viola. Good evening. I'm Jean Moses. I am a member of Faith in Action, a leader of Faith in Action East Bay, and a member of Imani Community Church. Sheriff Elect Sanchez, since the beginning of COVID, the jail has created and adapted quarantine and other public health policies, which helped to limit the spread of COVID. While relatively successful in achieving that goal, placing significant numbers of people in quarantine limits access to programs and visits and creates mental health challenges among the people who are incarcerated and staffing challenges for the jail commander. Given that COVID, although declining, may well increase this winter and may be joined by seasonal flu or other public health challenges, what have you learned about managing quarantines, including screening and housing inmates, promoting access to programs, legal counsel, and visits with family and friends that you will be applying?
Yes, so I've learned a great deal during this experience navigating COVID. I've learned our public health partners are very careful in evaluating the risks and benefits of imposing, as well as lifting restrictions related to the protocols we have in place to keep our population and our staff that are working within the jail safe. And we've been navigating COVID for 2.5 years now. I mean, moving into 3 very quickly. We still have masking requirements, even though other counties have moved away from them or have very, I guess, the wearing of a mask is optional. Including CDCR. The state has less restrictions than Alameda County. But even so, the leadership in our jail and our public health must agree that we must ease up on restrictions, but still have a measure of protocols in place to keep people safe and healthy as much as possible. And, we've seen stricter protocols severely impact programming. You've mentioned that, it impacts public visiting and allowing family and friends to come in and meet and see face to face their loved ones. So, with the restrictions that have been in place, restrictions and protocols such as decontaminating visiting areas, visiting booths between visits. We had a policy where we had to allow for a 1-hour air out between visits, and that limits the amount of visitors or even attorneys able to visit their clients in jail. So working with public health, we continue to stress the need to find ways to ease, although we still will clean and sanitize between visits. We'd like to, remove the 1-hour air out time. And they've seen through science that, the 1 hour may not be necessary. So working with public health, they've been great partners with us, but also working with our service providers such as GTL to be able to provide video visits as well as distance learning on the tablets. The tablets have been great to keep people occupied and engaged in educational services that are offered through there, as well as music and movies and whatnot. Supervisor Valle was instrumental in starting off the jail advocacy calls for the public to come in or call in and receive information surrounding COVID. It allowed our jail staff to hear from the advocates and the public and consider a different perspective on providing care in the jail. And we've learned from that, as some of you who have participated in those calls know. It's been beneficial for both sides. As COVID continues into the second year, the jail leadership and justice partners, such as the DA's office, the public defender's office, we began to meet because we found that access to clients was limited. So working with them, we've incorporated a number of changes to allow for the public defender's office to have more access to their clients. And this was working with public health to also allow for more in-person court hearings through COVID. So it's been challenging for all of us. It's been a learning experience for all of us, but it's also created an opportunity for all of us to build relationships with one another. And if they were existing relationships, they strengthened. But I know that these relationships will turn into partnerships as we move into my leadership next year.
Thank you very much for that answer.
Jean, did you have any additional question?
I'm not sure of the timing, Viola. I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The follow-up question is related to community involvement, and it's basically hiding from me, sorry. Would you be open to convening meetings with the community specifically to discuss strategies to improve conditions in the jail and eliminate jail deaths?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Kimberly Graves, if you could ask the second question, please. Second set of questions.
Yes, hello. My name is Kimberly, and I am the mother of a son who was criminalized for his mental health challenges. First, I want to thank you for meeting with us. It gives us an idea of how you intend to lead Santa Rita. Santa Rita has become the de facto treatment center for our most vulnerable community members. At least a third of those in custody have serious mental health needs. Many of those individuals and others lack access to affordable housing with supports as needed. How will you work with county officials, family members, and community advocates to implement Care First and see that the people with mental health challenges secure treatment in community-based care and thereby dramatically reduce the number of seriously mentally ill people in Santa Rita Jail? Community members, including the county's Mental Health Advisory Board, the Grand Jury, and Care First Community Coalition, in its 2022 through 23 budget agenda, have issued strong recommendations to provide appropriate resources to these populations and reduce Santa Rita's daily population. More specifically, how will you support the latest recommendations of the Grand Jury, Mental Health Advisory Board, and the Care First Coalition?
So I definitely want to make sure that we address and acknowledge what the grand jury report stated. And I don't have it offhand, but it bottom line down, it boils down to the fact that the jail should not be where services provided to those who are suffering from mental health issues. We should be delivering a level of care here at the jail, but the focus should not be for those who find themselves incarcerated just because of their mental health condition. And those services would be best delivered out in the community. And I believe that there has to be a group discussion that involves all stakeholders, the families, those who are impacted, those who can provide community services, and those who provide services here in the jail, to identify what services are being offered out in the community and what's being provided in the jail. And we all need to be on the same page to make sure that there's a continuity of care and wraparound services for this most vulnerable population. I've identified, and working with the staff here at the jail, we know that this is not the best environment for people to recover, to rehabilitate, to get to a safer, better place mentally, right? So we've already engaged in discussions with the DA's office, with community-based services such as La Familia, to increase their access into the jail and possibly identify a navigation center nearby, close to this jail, maybe not on campus, but close by, that we can divert those who are suffering from mental health issues away from the jail, and those who are being brought in for petty crimes away into a community-based center for treatment of services. So I think we can all agree that those who are suffering from mental health issues do not belong in this jail. It is not a facility that was built to support acute care for those who are suffering from mental health issues, and they would be better served through community-based programming services. So I do believe that we all need to be at the table to discuss how we provide that diversion. I know that access was a #1 issue with allowing for people to gather data from our jail, people who are coming in, services that are being provided, and that won't be a problem anymore. So I definitely believe that we need to have a group discussion and see what role the Sheriff's Office can play in that diversion process. But it also has to include our justice partners, the courts, the judges, and our public defender's office, as well as our DA's office, so that we are not seeing this cycle of people continuing to come in that are suffering from mental health.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Norma Nelson will ask the subsequent question. Norma?
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm here as a member of the.
Have access to.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm here as a family member whose beloved brother was murdered in Santa Rita jail. You've had a career spanning 24 years that has included positions as deputy sheriff, first line supervisor, division commander over the Santa Rita jail, and now sheriff elect. During the last 8 years, about 63 reported in custody deaths have occurred at Santa Rita jail, and an unknown number of others who were released from custody while on their deathbeds, suffering from fatal injuries and illnesses that occurred at Santa Rita jail. Perhaps those compassionate release deaths were not counted, as in the death of my beloved baby brother, Donald Nelson. There was a record of missing persons report. His twin sister, Donna, whom he talks to on a daily basis, called into the jail the morning after he was brought to Santa Rita jail. She was only told that he was in custody, but not that he was lying in a hospital bed dying. My family was not notified about this incident until a week after the assault on May 1st, 2020. We read about some of the details in the newspaper 6 months later. So part one of my question, so that no other family has to experience what our family experienced, what policies will you implement to assure immediate notification to families and the public regarding in custody deaths, all of them, including those compassionate releases from custody while the inmates are on their deathbed in a hospital?
Yes, I think that's a great question. It's a situation that I have had concerns about here with incidents like that occurring. And there is a different thought as to what is determined in custody death and what is not with our current leadership. And I'll agree with you that there are certain deaths that do occur through passionate or compassionate release that should be reported, that are not. And those will be reported moving forward. But also, to add to that, we will be making communication with family members when there is a serious assault where somebody has suffered a severe injury that can potentially lead to them passing away. That does not occur right now. That is something that we are working on through developing policy around. My staff here know how I feel about that, and the fact that we do not provide any communication at all to the family, nor do we provide any services to the family. So those issues that occur right now and currently, we will improve upon in the future, but it will be through speaking to family members like you, who will allow for us to understand what you've gone through, suffering through the situations that you have suffered through, and how we can do better. We don't have all the answers, but I do know that we are failing in that respect, and that will be improved upon. So that's definitely something that I would love to hear how the family could have received better service, better communication. I think we all understand that when we have an in custody death, there is investigation that follows, but there is information that we can share in providing to the family at least some information that they can go off of and prepare for, and not be shocked in receiving information in limited, or I guess learning from the media, which is what I hear most people, learn of these incidents by. So we'll definitely be more forthcoming in the future. I do feel for you, and I apologize for the lack of services that you've received so far, as well as your family.
Norma, you have,
Speaking of,
yeah, go ahead.
yes, yeah, speaking of some of the failures of Santa Rita jail, I for one would like to not have my brother Donald Nelson to have died in vain. Santa Rita jail failed to properly screen, classify, house, monitor, protect, and provide proper medical care before and after the fatal attack of my beloved friend and baby brother on May 1st, 2020. For God's sake, Donald Nelson was brought into Santa Rita jail wearing a hospital gown because he left the hospital prematurely. He suffered from diabetes, high blood pressure, mild developmental disability, and mental illness. Donald asked to be taken back to the hospital, yet instead, Donald was placed in a holding cell to be sentenced to death within 2 hours of being brought into custody at Santa Rita Jail. His brains basically stomped out and his defenseless body kicked so much that he endured several broken bones. So part two of my question is, what type of changes such as policies, procedures, operations, and contractor quality controls do you plan to put in place to assure that these unnecessary deaths stop? Simply put, what are you going to do about all of these deaths that are happening at Santa Rita Jail? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there is a level of accountability that needs to be strengthened for our agency members, as well as making sure that we have measures in place to avoid situations such as deaths that occur in the jail. Cameras have been something that we've been working to install in all areas of the jail that will help us to identify if there is anyone in distress. It will add a set of eyes to those that are, our staff members are walking throughout the facility, but they can't be in any one place, all the time. So cameras will assist us with that. And that's something that we've been pushing for installation for the last few years. But not only just that, it is making sure that we have supervisors, strong supervisors who are making sure that the staff are doing what they need to do. We also have to make sure that we are holding our medical team accountable as well. So there's a number of things that come into play when it comes to trying to have zero deaths in this jail. It is definitely something that I am working towards even now with my limited capacity. Even as division commander of the jail, I'm still limited in decisions that I can make. But it's something that, hopefully we can move into an era where we have zero deaths. There is going to be times where it will be unavoidable, just like people pass away out in the community, people will pass away here in custody. But I want to make sure that we are doing all we can to identify those who are in medical distress, or any kind of distress, and make sure that they are in a safe environment when they come here. So definitely accountability is key in these efforts, and making sure that we have people who have an understanding that they have a role to fulfill, and the expectations are that they fulfill that role because the community is counting on them to do so, and that includes myself.
Will there be cameras inside the holding cells?
So we are working to add cameras in as many places as we can. Obviously, we have to make sure that there are limited views for those who, with those tanks that have a restroom in it. We want to make sure that we have and allow for privacy in those areas, but anywhere where we can have a view of those who are inside those cells or the holding tanks, I guess, in our intake and transfer and release area, that's the goal.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Katie Dixon, if you could ask the subsequent question. Katie? You're muted. Just one moment. We can't hear you. All right. Let me, may I suggest that we go to the next question and come back to you? Would that work? Yes. All right. Just a second. Danny Tonksi, could you ask the subsequent question, please? And we'll come back to Katie Dixon's question.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, my name is Danny Thongsi, and I am a faith organizer with Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity. So Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity is a multi-faith organization work to support our immigrant refugees and those impacted by the carceral system. I'm also an Alameda County resident and someone who have been personally, impacted by the carceral system and ICE transfer. So my question is this. So Alameda County remains an outlier in the Bay Area by continuing a voluntary policy to essentially hand immigrants to ICE custody after they've been eligible for release from our county jail. This amounts to accrued double punishment for our immigrant community. So my question is this, will you stop ICE notification and how?
So I have long disagreed with our current policy of communicating with ICE should an individual meet certain thresholds that are based off of legislation that came forth. I want to say it was in either 2015 or 2017. I can assure you that come next year, the Sheriff's Office will have a policy that will severely restrict communication with ICE. At present, if someone comes into custody and ICE sends a request for information, deputy has to check to see if the individual meets certain criteria for that communication to occur to ICE. If the individual doesn't, the ICE request is filed in their jacket and no further action is taken. But my policy will be very simple. It's going to state that we will no longer respond to requests for information to ICE for anyone in our custody. The only way that we are going to have any type of interaction with ICE is if they come forward with a criminal warrant that's signed by a federal judge or magistrate for someone to take into custody. That's something that we allow for other law enforcement agencies. If anybody has a criminal warrant outstanding, they can come and pick the individual up from our jail. That is the same thing that we will do with any law enforcement agency. I believe that restricting this communication with ICE will allow for our undocumented community, our members, to feel safe living in our county. Being able to feel safe reporting a crime, being able to ask for assistance. They need to be able to trust our deputies and our staff and trust that we're going to be able to provide the same level of service to them just as we would any other citizen or anybody that lives in operates businesses or partakes in any businesses out here in our county. So I think that will send a strong message, and it allow for our undocumented community to feel like they can trust us. And you are correct when you say that Alameda County is the outlier right now, but it will no longer be come January.
Thank you. Reverend Darren Jenkins, if you could take that, if you could help us with a subsequent question.
Good evening. There is a culture of cruelty that I want to talk about. Of course, there's a culture of cruelty in all jails, and particularly nasty culture of cruelty at Santa Rita Jail. There have been several examples of this culture of cruelty in our jail. For instance, the stories of current inmates receiving spoiled milk with their meal, or the practice of collective punishment where some of the women in custody are taken to an area and asked to strip down, where there are windows and male deputies can also view this going on. As you are currently the commander of the Santa Rita Jail, do you believe there is such a culture of cruelty at the Santa Rita Jail? And if so, how do you respond to substantiated reports of abuse in the jail?
So what I will say is that we do have members who have crossed the line. I do know that measures have been taken to make sure for those instances that you've talked about, where there's any viewing capability for anybody walking by, we have curtains, and we do have a method to be able to cover up when there is a strip search in play. Those have been addressed. Those were issues that occurred before I was here as the division commander. I do know that we do have and have had staff that have acted inappropriately in their conduct with the jail population. And I want to make sure that you are assured that individuals that step out of line will be held accountable. I want to make sure that you understand that this will not be leadership that treats people differently because they're here incarcerated. I believe that for us to have humane treatment, I have to make sure that I set the example, and I make sure that the expectations are very clear that here at this jail, we will be providing a safe living environment for people in our custody. And that will be free from cruel or degrading treatment. And the message will be made clear for anyone who acts maliciously outside of policy to inflict harm upon anyone in our custody. They will be held accountable. I think that's an expectation that is that should be paramount for the community to expect from the sheriff's office. So there's going to be a different approach in how we run a jail. And this jail is going to be not just a place where we house and provide basic services, food, medical care to individuals. This will be a place, and I'm hoping that I can make some quick actions to build this into a hub of services and opportunities to offer to folks who have not had opportunities or have them exposed to opportunities they may not have been exposed to out in the community. I definitely know that individuals fall into the wrong path because they have not had the support systems that they need. So I am hoping that we create a support system here so that for those who do come into custody, will have some way to find themselves in a stable environment where they can provide for themselves, where they can provide for their families, and have some stability to be able to live in this county that is extremely expensive and very difficult for people to live and actually thrive in, but to be able to give them the tools that they need to do so. But I can assure you that small missteps will be held to account because we know that small issues will turn into big issues if they're not treated appropriately. So I know that there have been some issues that have come to light in years past and even currently that reflect negatively on this agency. And I'm going to do all that I can to make sure that I build that trust back with the community.
Thank you for your answer. And I believe you have touched on the answer of this follow-up, which is very quickly. We know that Oath Keepers operated a booth under an Alameda County Sheriff Office banner in 2017 Urban Shield event. We know that you made a platform promise to get rid of the bad apples. You've touched on that answer, and the follow-up question was, what will you do to implement that campaign promise? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the last part of that?
You made a campaign platform promise to get rid of the bad apples. The follow-up question was, what will you do to implement that campaign promise?
Yeah, definitely. So I believe that, creating an autonomous internal affairs unit that can take allegations and investigate them without influence from upper leadership is important. And that is something that I'm going to look to build. holding people accountable is really key. You know, there's no one that doesn't like, and someone just said this to me recently, which is absolutely true and correct. No one doesn't like a bad cop more than a good cop, because it reflects poorly on not only the good cops, but everybody that wears a uniform, that is very proud of providing service to the community, and doing it in a humane and caring, compassionate manner. So when you have people who do not reflect the same values, then those people need to be identified, and they either change their behavior and reflect the values of the agency, or they are weeded out, just like you said. So that's definitely something that is very important to me. I think that we've been lacking that in that respect, and that's something that's going to be a focus of mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If is Katie ready to ask the question, her question? You know, we had tech problems earlier. Okay. All right, she's having problems with her sound. Okay. Let me see, just a second. Yuri, can you ask that question?
Yes, I can. Sorry, Katie, that your sound is not working. But Katie's question was, too many people return to the community from being in custody only to find themselves in cycle of reincarceration. What are your plans to increase reentry programs and services so that people are better prepared for release? This includes connecting to the community with available services upon release. Will you work directly with those of us with lived experience to improve reentry strategies, welcome us as credible messengers to staff programs inside, and increase connection with service providers in the community? What will be your budget priorities around expanding reentry resources, programs, and reducing recidivism?
That I'm going to suggest, Yuri, that you ask her the first question again, because that's a lot of questions at one time. But thank you.
So the first question is, what are your plans to increase reentry programs and services so that people are better prepared for release?
Okay, so that is definitely one of my focuses. As far as the jail and providing opportunities inside the jail, it is another method of crime prevention that we have yet to prioritize. And I will be working with our community-based organizations who have been asking for access to the jail, and to also reach out to previously incarcerated persons who could come in and share what opportunities that they've taken advantage of, what opportunities that didn't work for them, but also be available to mentor and be that, I guess, that person that can follow people out and make sure that they stay on task, right? I think that's where we lose people, is that gap between their release from incarceration into the services that they should be touching base with, and then they don't show up. They don't have transportation. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have just simple things that we take advantage of being out in the community and being able to get these services on our own. They need some assistance. And so making sure that we have case management, discharge planning for individuals so that they can be followed out into the community is really the key here. And partnering with people who want to deliver these services inside the jail, to be able to allow them access to come in. And yes, that includes previously incarcerated, because I strongly believe that an individual here is not going to listen quite as closely and believe every word that they hear from someone who's wearing a uniform, right? Or a badge. They're going to listen to someone who's had that lived experience and who has been able to reflect what has come of the opportunities that they've taken advantage of. So, I mentioned it before, I do want to create a hub here at the jail that provides educational and vocational opportunities so that people can actually gain sound employment with benefits and wages to live comfortably here in the county. And I've already engaged with partners over at the building and construction trades to be able to make that happen. They are excited. They need skilled workers. I want to be able to develop skilled workers here. So it's going to be a strong partnership. I can't wait to see what it's going to look like, but it's definitely going to have a larger presence here at the jail. These are definitely crime prevention efforts that are just reimagined, and we really need to focus on this.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do something about this stuff over here. I'm just so sorry for this epic failure. Thank you so much, Yuri. Now, with that, the follow-up question is, what sort of budget priorities have you identified that you can put behind some of these plans to make sure we have credible mentors and well-staffed case managers that have access to the real programming in and outside? Like you said, there's a need for us to really focus on that continuum of care pipeline, for back a letter words there. So again, what sort of budget priorities have you identified that we could go ahead and put behind, again, a mentorship program, well-staffed case managers and things like that?
Definitely. So there are a number of grant opportunities that offer funding to reentry processes, either building out, starting new reentry processes, or expanding on existing reentry services. So that's something that we can look towards, and we have looked towards, but there's also AB 109 funding that will support these efforts, and working with probation to identify the community-based organizations who are ready to deliver this service, and partner with us at the Sheriff's Office and probation, as well as behavioral health, and those who can assist with mental health services here in the jail. That's something that we need to really engage our behavioral health team in the jail to see how we can expand that out. And that includes bringing in, who is going to respond for individuals who are suffering from mental crisis, right? If there's a way that we can make sure that we can touch base with family members or friends that can engage somehow through a phone call or whatnot to bring somebody down, we need to start thinking about those processes as well. But mentorship and bringing services into the jail, I think we focus with probation, AB 109 funding, and then making sure that we are properly doing individual assessments with people so that we know what their life has been like, what services that they have received that didn't work, services that they're looking towards but haven't been able to really receive or know where to reach out to get them. So housing, all that. We need to be able to provide good assessments to our community-based organizations so that they can focus on what the needs are and not have this, we'll throw all the same things to everyone and see what they grasp to. I think individual assessments are key. And I think, when we think towards case management, those individual assessments are absolutely important, so that people feel like they are individuals and that we're not just treating them like they're just anybody else, and we're just going to push the same services to everybody and then hope it works, because that's not working.
Thank you so much for that engagement. And I know we got like a couple of seconds left, because yes, you definitely already identified a real need for us to do a real audit for the back of a letter term for the existing services in the jail, the services out of the jail, and really out of what services are actually effective as opposed to people on these rollover grants. I think that's something that we could be taking a better and a closer look at, and bringing us in as credible messengers, I believe will help us foster and facilitate that. And with that, thank you so much, Ms. Sanchez, for engaging with me on that question. And I'm looking forward to working with the office to see some of these things into fruition. And I will yield back to
To me, Viola.
Viola.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I get to ask the last question in terms of this panel. At the state level, the League of Women Voters of California strongly advocated for passage of AB 1185. As members of the Alameda County Council of Leagues, all 6 local leagues transmitted a letter in July of 2021 commending the Board of Supervisors for moving to establish independent oversight of the Sheriff's Office in Alameda County pursuant to that law. And certainly statistics from the U.S. Department of Justice on the number of deaths and lawsuits arising from the sheriff's operations in Alameda County underscored for all of us how critical it is to balance the office's extensive powers with effective and independent oversight. As a candidate, you endorsed implementation of AB 1185 and civilian oversight of the sheriff's office with subpoena power. A broad community coalition has come together, including our 6 leagues, with key principles for effective, independent, transparent, representative civilian oversight, working with a full-time Office of Inspector General and independent counsel with adequate resources for professional, investigative, policy, and administrative support staff. So, related to this, will you continue to speak out in favor of such a board? And second, what steps will you take to support a strong civilian oversight?
Yes, so I did support and I do support having an oversight committee. I believe that we are public safety service members to the community, and having oversight, at least having a different perspective from those that develop that committee is a strength for us. And it allows for us to be able to respond to some of the concerns that the community has had. And so to have that body be able to be that voice is something that I continue and will continue to embrace. As the board develops its plan for what that sheriff's office community oversight or oversight committee looks like, my role is to make sure that my office is communicating effectively and that we're accessible to the board's needs. I believe, that having that community input is very critical to how we deliver services and how the community sees us. So I, along with my top leadership, will be accessible to the board and will be available to assist in any way that we can. I believe that we should not be concerned about anybody finding anything. If we're doing something wrong, that we need to be called on it, right? I also believe that if we're doing something right, that we should be, applauded for. But it's definitely something that we can show that, we are being responsible with our funding, because I know that there's always questions about how we spend our funding. We do have a lot of money in our budget that were afforded by the county, and it is very expensive to run an agency as large as ours. But I want to make sure that we are transparent in that spending, and how we do that can be assisted by what recommendations the Oversight Committee recommends. So it will be a learning event. I've never, worked with an Oversight Committee before. The Sheriff's Office never has, so it'll be interesting to see how it develops. But I'm definitely open to it. I don't see anything wrong with working with a body to be transparent in our processes and how we deliver services.
We couldn't agree with you more, and I really appreciate your response. Thank you for that. And certainly I, as one of the league members, League of Women Voters here in Alameda County, one of the 6 leagues, certainly look forward to working with you and working in a positive way. For these, I'd like to turn it now to Maurice, who will attempt to organize our questions that have come through chat. Thank you so much. A pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, likewise.
So I'd like to, again, invite folks to the audience to add questions to the chat. Here are a few of the questions that have been submitted. And of course, Yuri, you're going to monitor our time on these. So what is your position on reduction or reducing the number of people with mental health challenges in the jail? So I know you spoke to that a little bit earlier, but this question is persisting. So please give us your best reflection.
No, absolutely. You know, I think it's a concern that many have for those who do have mental health conditions and crisis and suffer crisis, that they are here and they find themselves here at the jail, and this is not the appropriate location. So how do we work as far as department heads, county department heads work together to create an environment for them outside of the jail, for them to be assessed and properly provided housing and housing that has on-site services. So that's something that we definitely need to engage in conversation with healthcare services and our behavioral health services team to see what that looks like, and how do we divert people that suffer from mental health issues, that continue to see themselves, you know, in and out of custody. How do we get them the appropriate treatment from an outside community-based organization? Because that is really where they should be getting services. So until we can identify an appropriate solution, we still need to make sure that there is a focus in delivering quality service and meeting behavioral health needs inside the jail, because people do find themselves here. We have to be able to deliver some level of service and a high level of service here at the jail.
And so actually the next question kind of follows into that same thing, asking, is there a certified mental health unit at present? And if not, what's the plan?
Is there a certified mental health unit in the jail?
Yes.
So there are certified mental health clinicians that deliver services in the jail, and psychiatrists. There is a therapeutic housing unit where we have focused educational courses, focused treatment for individuals who are the more severe cases that we have. So we do have a delivery of services, but a certified unit, we don't have like one specific unit that is certified, I guess I could say.
All right. Okay.
I don't know what that looks like, to be honest with you.
Right.
I just know that we have certified clinicians and behavioral health providers.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you plan to address gender-based violence that occurs in jails, either from others who are incarcerated or guards, it says, or guards or bailiffs? What changes would you make to ensure that those who are incarcerated are connected to advocates and provided care when sexual violence occurs?
Yes, so right now we partner with Tri-Valley Haven to be accessible to anyone who is incarcerated. They can communicate with them through letters, through the phone. They have free phone calls they can make to Tri-Valley. And it's basically to support them should they have been victims of sexual abuse, whether it's while they're incarcerated, whether it was before they were incarcerated, they can be reached out to. We do have a Prison Rape Elimination Act policy that we follow. Anyone that comes forward and says that they were assaulted or sexually harassed, they can file a report with a deputy. And we have a team that will follow up and do an investigation to see where that leads us. Whether it is something that occurs out in the community, we will forward that report to whoever the jurisdiction is that would oversee that investigation, or if it was at another facility, we'll forward that report to that other facility so that they can follow up on their half. So we do have measures in place, but definitely the outreach, so that if they were uncomfortable reporting anything to a deputy or sheriff's office staff, they can also report to behavioral health staff, medical staff, or reach out to our Tri-Valley Haven for some assistance.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question has come asking about your thoughts about Urban Shield, and what is your position on utilizing that program to keep the community safe and have that be a part of school shootings. This person feels Urban Shield is needed, but they're asking, do you support bringing back Urban Shield and using it in the community as a program?
So Urban Shield was around for a number of years, and it cost millions of dollars. That was supported through a UASI grant, Urban Area Security Initiative grant. And I want to say that we accepted $5 million the last time that we actually did accept funding behind that grant to support such an effort. It is a massive effort. Not everyone wants Urban Shield. Not all of the cities want Urban Shield training in their cities. And so there are cities that do want training. They do want education and to have their local law enforcement provide training, or even the sheriff's office to provide training around active shooter or workplace violence. And to that, I say that we will still be available to be able to offer and deliver that training to those who seek out that type of training. But I have to say that I'm going to be sensitive to the request of the other cities that don't want to be a part of that. I do believe the training is necessary to keep our staff aware of current events and what is happening around the world and what can happen here locally. And our team does continue to train behind events that we can see, which includes school violence, guns on campus. So that training is available. That training will be made available. And I encourage those who want that training to reach out, and the sheriff's office can help support their local law enforcement to deliver that type of training.
Thank you. Another question is, what do you intend to do to maximize attorney-client access at Santa Rita, including opening rooms and extending hours?
Yes, so we've been participating with our justice partners in I want to say it's a bi-weekly meeting where we discuss access to clients, where, COVID came in and it really limited access, and a lot of what we were able to provide was a pathway through the GTL, the phone system, so that their clients could call them free of charge and be able to get guidance on their cases and whatnot. So we are, limited with space. This jail has zero space, to be honest with you. I have even staff members that don't have offices. In fact, my office is not in the most ideal location either, but it'll do. But space is very limited. It's something that I am looking to find out, what is here on campus where we can remove certain entities and maybe house them somewhere else so that we can really maximize the space here at the jail for jail operations. Allowing more access is definitely what we don't want to do here, is limit or delay someone's case, right? So we have been working with the justice partners, and that's something that Supervisor Valle also built out as far as a platform for us to all come together, the public defender's office, even private attorneys and the DA's office and the courts, to see how we can allow for more access and expanding hours. And so, you know, that has been a request from the public defender's office and the attorneys. And expanding hours is difficult because we have to allow for public visiting to occur. And in order for us to expand hours during certain, I believe the hours that they've requested, which we have shut down, are between 3 and 6 p.m. We have activities that occur during those hours, such as feeding, such as court returns, and certain things like that take staffing, right, to facilitate. So if we have staffing that is focused on making sure that a meal is delivered while it's hot, we may not be able to facilitate an attorney during that window to have their visit. So we do have limited hours, but when we can fit someone in, we do. We've allowed opportunities over the weekend, but it's just something that we have to really balance with staffing and, of course, the available space. So we definitely know that is an ask, and we continue to work towards hoping we can expand, but at this point we can't.
Okay, well, I hope you get some office space. No. Another question has come from the community that expressed an awareness about an inmate being able to get diabetic medication. But the question is, how will you expedite the development of effective channels for family members of inmates to make appeals or dialogue or to share what they know about the circumstances of inmates?
Yes, so that has been a discussion recently with my team as far as how do we develop that channel where information that is flowing from either the community or family members of those who are incarcerated when it's regarding medication, whether it's regarding crisis, you know, they just got off the phone with someone and they didn't seem like they were, you know, doing very well. And how does that get communicated without that message falling through the cracks? And so that's something that we are actually talking about as to having one channel. We have one source where we can put it on our public website. As far as if you have any concerns or if it's emergent, you call this number or you send an email to this group or whatnot. Or if it's not emergency, but you're trying to get a hold of someone to convey a prescription that or medication that this person needs to take that's critical. So that's definitely been a discussion, how we build that out. It's going to be interesting who that responsible party is, because if it's medical, we want to make sure that we're not violating people's HIPAA, right? So does all medical go to one source? And then how does the sheriff's office know to follow up on that medical question because it's going just to medical, So it's all those things that we've actually brought up as far as how we identify one channel, but I don't know if one channel is going to be possible just because of the privacy issues behind it. So it's definitely something we're discussing, and definitely something that we're going to revisit here pretty quickly.
Thank you. A number of people have expressed their positive feelings about you being the sheriff, and one of the people expressing that positive feeling asked about the communication process for people in jail and their families and loved ones. They see that as critical, and they want to know about the cost of a phone call being so expensive, and how it can be addressed, the cost not being a barrier for communication with inmates.
Excuse me. So the cost has actually recently, within the last couple of years, gone down. And that is because the FCC limited how much can be charged to the families, really, because the families are the ones that are paying for the calls and the calling cards and in commissary and whatnot. So FCC limited it to 7 cents per minute. It used to be, I want to say 23 cents per minute, which is a lot of money. But the revenue that comes from those calls goes directly into our inmate welfare fund. So, and our inmate welfare fund can only be used for services and delivery of services to the jail population. So I know that the cost for the calls has gone down. It may be the cost for tablet services, whether it's music, movies, those types of other recreational or activity opportunities or apps that are on the tablets that might be costing that money or that increase. So those are all set by, the prices are set by the provider. And when we go out to bid for these providers, one of the things that we can discuss that I do not believe that we've thrown during the bidding process out is, how do you compete with your vendors when it comes to cost? So I don't believe that that's been part of the bidding process, and that's something that we will be entertaining moving forward.
Thank you again. So this question, how will you be executing or will sheriffs be executing evictions, particularly those that are COVID related with, tenants losing jobs and rent not being paid? And what's your feeling or position on that?
Yeah, so with evictions and, any eviction, regardless of whether it's COVID related or not, I think, when you are kicking someone out of their home, we have to really think about doing it humanely. How do we ensure that an individual has somewhere to go? So when we have landlords or property owners who are seeking eviction, I think the process needs to start where we are communicating with our social services partners and those who provide housing, whether it's community-based organizations, to make sure that they have somewhere to go. There's resources that we have that time, because there's generally a window of time before the time or when you're served, by the time you have to get out. And so why are we not sending our agency, our departments regarding social services or housing or any type of resource out to that location to make sure that they have somewhere to go before it comes time for eviction? So that's, I think, where we fail as a county. And so how do we work on developing a method of, once someone's served with an eviction, where does that communication go? I think that communication goes from whoever is seeking out that eviction to the sheriff's office partners with social services or the other resources to make sure that someone is directed to that location to offer and provide housing and some interim stay before they can gain another place to live. So, but I think that's where we fall short right now.
Okay, thank you. And maybe this will be the last question, allow you to breathe a little bit. Are there specific metrics as you reflect on managing this institution that you might use to report out or post on a regular basis, maybe monthly or every 6 months, might include such things as access to in-custody programming, or I'm not sure what you're really thinking about it, or even if you've had time to do this, but could you reflect on that a little bit as your kind of last question?
No, absolutely. I think, once we start laying out this wider array of opportunity and services here in the jail, I'd love to report some metrics on how those services are being taken advantage, who is really gaining some benefit behind those services or opportunities, And I'd love to see some way that those who have taken advantage and seen success behind the opportunities provided here in the jail, that they give their success story and that we publish it, so that the public can see, the community can see that there are good efforts that are occurring here. And please, come help support these efforts if you can, but see what we're doing and how we're impacting those who are incarcerated. So I do believe that we can share data, and it'll be good to hear what the community is looking for as far as what metrics they're looking to see. So I would lean on our community members to say, hey, what have you been looking for that we're just not putting out there? And we'll see how we can deliver it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for, accepting those barrage of questions. It was our want to make you feel somewhat comfortable and to develop our relationship with you, and as well as for us to be informed and for the community to be informed. I'd like to ask if now is the appropriate time for Reverend Darren to share a closing prayer, or is something else supposed to happen before?
I think this is a good time.
Okay.
Thank you, Maurice. We thank everyone for coming out. Just a reminder that there were over 100 and some people in the participating today, and out of that pool of 120 or 150 some odd people who were here, there are over 24 questions still in the Q&A that we just do not have time to address. So the question period and answering period was open to everyone, and I do apologize for us not getting to each and every one of them. If you don't mind, I'd like to say a closing prayer in the profession of my faith. Dear Master and Creator of life, author of love and peace, we are thankful you've allowed us to gather, listen, and question together in this forum. We ask you to lift up, protect, strengthen, embolden, and direct the path of your daughter, Miss Yesenia Sanchez, whom your children have elected to serve them as the law of this union called Alameda County. We ask for your binding power to allow all of us to work together harmoniously, to assist each other to bring greatness to the place we live, work, raise our families, and the place we and our children and their children, and so on, will share a quality of life fit for all walks of life. Let us leave this line, but not your hands, in the service of your will performed in your way. Thank you for your blessings and your blessing upon us all. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Darren, for that beautiful reflection. Once again, thank you, Ms. Sanchez, for meeting with us. And thank you, everyone who has been present today. I will have to leave it to Yuri to say whether or not or how this recording might be available, or how we might capture those questions that were asked but weren't able to be presented. So I'll leave that to our coordinator, Yuri.
Thank you, Maurice and Viola and everyone that joined us today, and Ms. Sanchez. So there is a recording of the Zoom, and I'll make sure that everyone gets that on the registrant list. And in terms of questions that were asked and didn't get an answer, I will address that with the team and send it to Ms. Sanchez as well. And she has available time to answer those questions. And I'll keep everyone posted on this town hall on what her response is. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. A pleasure working with everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Ms.
Thank you for having
Sanchez.
me.
Thanks, Ms.
Thank
Sanchez.
you.
Everybody.
I want to thank Yuri and Jean and the folks from Faith in Action East Bay for putting this on. I want to thank Viola.
And Richard,
And our host, Mr. Maurice, I want to thank you as well for all your time and work you all put into this. And yeah.
and Reverend Duran and Danny, the whole family.
We hanging out for.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm just
We have 65